technologies that we might be dependent upon, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure that somewhere someone must have thought of something like that, but you can't completely close that door because, as we all know, um, to use a phrase, lab leaks happen, and whether on purpose or not. And again, I don't see how this is America first. I don't see how this promotes global safety. I understand working with allies and even having some global allies very close, but this to me is a bridge too far. RC, what do you thought here? Give you the last word.
Man, the last 3 days, Andrew, since we've been doing the spin cycle, has been vigilance, people. Vigilance. Don't get lost in the sauce. Don't let the distraction of daylight savings time take
Mm.
you away from the fact that we have the explosive diarrhea parasite running around and the CDC and other systemic failures, right? Don't let it take away from the fact that Congress is trying to ram one through on this deal where they basically co-opt military with the nation of Israel, which ultimately isn't going to be good for you. Don't get into such a haze or a malaise or idol worship over movement, man. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle it's on. Don't get distracted from the most important thing. And in a self-governing society, that's us doing the governing and holding the people that we send to represent us accountable. They hate to see you coming. In particular, they hate to see you coming in mass. So make them hate to see you coming, because that's also going to bring them to heel. The way that it works is you tell them what to do and they do it, not the other way around. But if
Mm.
we're not vigilant and we don't enforce it, it's not going to matter.
If we told them what to do and they did it, as in we the people, I feel like America would be a much different nation right right now. The whole grift is, hey, you tell us what to do and we won't do it, and then we'll run against the things that we're actually doing and convince you that voting for us is the only way to stop the things that you didn't want in the first place, that we are now doing, that we are now going to run against doing, but then turn around and do again once we get past election day.
A
Oh my gosh.
coordinator to coordinate the coordinating.
And it's
Yes.
unfortunate that everybody understood exactly what you just said, Andrew. Like, seriously.
All right. Okay. Let's see here. I'm just checking the news feed here. Nothing. I'm not really seeing much else going on. Well, I mean, there's a lot going on, but yeah, I think that's going to do it for today. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap up?
I just want to add that I've been seeing a lot of successes. Like, people are really pushing back on what's going on with the flock, what's going on with these data centers. The people's voices, they're really standing up and saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate, we're not going to take it, right? We're not going to take what it is that this government is pushing upon us. So we've been having a lot of success out there. And I want to say kudos to everybody out there that's standing up and saying, you know what, this is our America and we're going to take it back one step at a time, picking up something that they want to be able to advocate for and running with that baton to make sure that we keep America the way we want to have America. Because made in America, America is great, and that's the way it needs to stay.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Spin Cycle. Remember, you can find our other work, Culture Crossroads. We have new episodes every Sunday, 5 p.m. Central Time, and they are distributed over a wide variety of social media in various forms, and of course on BEKTV.plus. That is BEKTV.plus. BEKTV.plus. Let me get the right banner going here. And RC, remind us, Watchmen Action, where can people find that?
Yeah, Andrew, you can find all things Watchmen Action at Watchmen, it's plural, Watch, M-E-N, action.org. On social media, our handle's the same for everyone. It's simply Watchmen Action. Throw it into one of the search bars. You will find our stuff on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, on Twitter, X, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards, all Watchmen Action, all things Watchmen Action at watchmenaction.org.
All right. We've been kicking off about 12:45 most days this week, but RC, I know you're out and on site. So what time can people expect tomorrow's installment of Spin Cycle?
12:45.
12:45. We're going to keep it rolling. All right. We'll see you guys again tomorrow, a little after lunchtime. Till then, take care.
Most of us have something we have been quietly managing, hoping it resolves, telling ourselves we will deal with it next week. Board-certified providers are available today from your home. Private, thorough, and licensed in your state. Stop putting it off. 360phi.com.
He had a good night, and then a morning thought he couldn't shake.
Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out,
Are live at Turning Point. We are at the Student Action Summit, Tampa Convention Center, Tampa, Florida, and the hits just keep on coming. My dear friend Jason Storm joins us. Brother, how are you?
Pleasure to be with you. So yeah,
we were saying before we started here, this interview, this is long overdue. Like we've been like, hey, we need this, hey, we need to do this, hey, we need to do that, and it's like we're finally here, we're able to do it. Jason, you know, you and your family have been fighting for life for a long time, and you've done a lot of great work. And I know, you know, you do your conferences and things like that. I don't think we talk about this topic enough, nor do I think we celebrate the people who are in the trenches fighting the battle, which is one of the reasons we wanted to have you on. So can you tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing and what's happening right now in the fight for life?
Yeah, so I've been involved in this fight for almost 30 years. From the time I became a Christian, my dad led me to Christ at 19 years old, had come out of a wayward teenage years, had a girlfriend that had an abortion. So it was very personal to me. I was that irresponsible, selfish young man who didn't know how to honor and protect women or children. And so getting converted at 19 years old, God began to teach me how to be a man. And a lot of that, of course, was rebuilding my protective instincts as a man, right? As men, so many people say abortion's a woman's issue. And we say, no, abortion is a man's issue. Right? Abortion grew out of the soil of broken masculinity. Abortion can only exist in a culture where men have no protective instincts intact. Where men protect women and children, lay their lives down in Christ-like manner for their families, then abortion is unthinkable. And it certainly would be criminal, and was criminal throughout most of this nation's history. And it was actually men that legalized abortion, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't women that foisted abortion on the culture. Right. It was 7 Supreme Court justices, all male, who gave us the Roe versus Wade opinion. And then it was 50 male governors that implemented it into their states. And then every single city where abortion clinics began to come above ground and murder children with impunity, it was male police chiefs, male law enforcement officers, male judges, overwhelmingly male leadership in all these cities that implemented what was previously criminal, an act of homicide, to now being done in broad daylight with legal protection, the wholesale murder of little children in the womb. And so the impact of that on our culture, I don't think you can overstate the significance of what that bloodshed has done to our nation. The Bible speaks of blood guilt, blood guiltiness, and the defiling of a land through the shedding of innocent blood, the trampling of the poor and the needy, and turning our back on the fatherless and the orphan, right? And this is exactly what these children are going into abortion clinics. They're being betrayed and abandoned by their own mothers, their own fathers, their own families, in what should be the safest haven for life. The mother's womb is now the most hostile and dangerous place for a little developing human being, a little precious child, developing little hands and feet, brain activity, heartbeat, these little precious babies. You know, it is now hostile territory. And so abortion is our gross national sin.
Yes.
It is the issue, right? Now it's downstream of other issues. We already experienced a gross secularization as a nation. There was a de-Christianizing of our country, our educational institutions. You know, the mass factory, godless government education system had already entrenched itself prior to the legalization of abortion. The sexual revolution of the 60s and 50s, unleashed so much more. And so abortion comes downstream of all that. But if we're going to reverse engineer this and protect life and establish a culture of life, that we have to take this issue head on. We have to talk about the stained consciences of millions of Americans. We have to talk about what's going on in all of our cities. Just a few miles from where we're sitting, babies are being murdered right now here in the city of Tampa Bay. Right. So we're in Florida, and I'm running the White Rose chapter. If you know about the White Rose Resistance, check out the White Rose Resistance. We're helping build their Florida chapter. Seth Gruber and AJ Hurley and other awesome guys, and so needed. We're here in Florida, a pro-life hub. Ron DeSantis is probably the most pro-life governor, one of the most, maybe the strongest governor in the country. We have Republican pro-life supermajorities in our legislature here, and yet here in Florida, there's over 50 operating abortion clinics.
Yep.
50,000 babies are scheduled to be murdered this year in pro-life Florida under pro-life leadership. So our pro-life leaders are essentially protecting the abortion industry here in Florida and around our nation. And so here's the reality of where we are, to fast forward to where we are as a nation today. 3 years after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, 7 months into the Trump administration, it is legal for a mother to kill her own child in every single state in America. Thousands of babies are being legally murdered in every single state, including our most conservative states. That's a problem.
Jason, it's a huge problem, and it never gets any easier to hear, although we are supposed to. Like, we're called as watchmen, right? I was telling somebody earlier, it's Ezekiel 33:2. We're held as leaders to a higher standard,
right?
And our responsibilities, therefore, we have to speak louder on these things. So, Jason, you were talking about how we got here, and the thing that stuck with me is Father's order, right? He has men, he has the husband, then the wife, and then the children, and they've systematically chopped away. So they like you said, they've got us as men where we've had to come back and reclaim our manhood and understand what our responsibility was as protectors, because they wanted to get to the women. And Juliana and I write on this all the time, this war on women. They're taking wombs from female cadavers and putting them into men who think they're women with the goal of having a baby. That's a war on women. And now they're saying you don't even need a woman to have a baby.
Absolutely.
Right? So they get the woman, because what they really want is the children. And Satan is like, I'll take them wherever I can get them. If I can kill them in the womb, great. If I can't, then I'm going to basically kill them in life and make them eunuchs and then want to kill themselves.
Yeah. Heartbreaking.
Right. For us, and we do the levels of government, the self-government, right? So self-government, if you govern yourself correctly, proper biblical worldview, good moral compass, then you'll work. Then your family, then the church, and then there's a very small need for civil government.
Right.
To your point, though, about what's happening with these abortion mills around here, the fact that triangle that I just mentioned is turned upside down allows for this thing to happen.
Yeah.
Right? And I know for us, like, obviously we've been in this battle and we understand what time it is, but I think what Seth did with 1916 was really important, because I saw more of our friends who were, I'd say, rubes, but they were kind of normies in this. They knew it was happening, they knew it wasn't right, but they didn't really know what to do about it. It felt like he gave some more context to it. What are your thoughts on that, and then your involvement with White Rose? And then after that, I want to get to how we can help you, but I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a huge need to educate the church, right? My people perish for lack of knowledge.
Right.
And so much of what goes on with the abortion industry is done behind closed doors, right? And I mean, really, the reality is this: the emasculation of men in this country is far-reaching. It goes beyond just abortion. Sadly, it extends into our pulpits and down into our pews. Pastor Mark Gungor, a famous, popular pastor in Wisconsin, runs very popular marriage seminar. You ever heard of him? Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. He said this. He said the highest concentration of effeminate men in this country is behind the pulpit. And so that's a pastor speaking to pastors. And as somebody who's been in the pulpit and has served in church leadership for many years, I can attest to the fact that so many of the problems really trace back to cowardice, weakness in our pulpits. Pastors have such a heavy burden on their shoulders. And as you said, leaders are held to a higher standard. And for a man that wants to be a pastor, and then claims a salary.
Yep.
For being a pastor, what a responsibility. And and none of us are perfect. I've had my failures in the ministry. I've had times of need to step out and for renewal, refreshing, burnout, those things. These are real things. It's a difficult job.
Yeah.
You're bearing the burdens of lots of people and getting very little appreciation for it often in return. And it is a challenging job. But one of the essential components, right, of being a faithful pastor is courage.
Yes.
I mean, Jesus was the most confrontational, the most, confrontational, controversial. Like, he didn't shy away from saying and doing the hard things.
Yep.
And so many pastors operate on this MO of, Jason, I want to get involved. I'd love to do more, but this is a delicate topic at our church. We've got to deal with it. It's like, Pastor, you have to speak forthrightly on this.
Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out, she ordered the test to her door and did it at home. She had real answers before the week was out. No waiting room, no half-day gone. 360phi.com. Real answers from home.
He had a good business, solid product, good people. He just couldn't figure out why growth had stalled. Sherlock found the buyers he didn't know were looking. Now he knows exactly where to go next. Learn more at investinanswers.com.
I mean, we need moral clarity. We need moral backbone. We have abortion. We have the godlessness spreading across our nation. We have a generation of young people that don't know what gender they are, in large part because the church has failed to speak with very clear and persuasive authority on these issues, and instead has chosen to take the path of least resistance, essentially. A theology of cowardice, taking the path of least resistance and just preferring to do what is easy, what is safe. That's not Jesus.
Oof. Ain't that the truth, Jason? It's funny. Julian and I have been on the road quite a bit lately. We were in New York City, and then we spoke in Knoxville at Patriot Church.
Yeah.
Pastor Ken and Valencia Peters.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, one of the things we started opening with is we're like, you wonder why things look the way they do today because the church abdicated its role of leadership in the culture. And many of you are sitting at tables that Yeshua says you should be flipping. Yeah. You talked about him being confrontational with good reason.
Yes.
I just had David Walsh on. We were on Rumble's main channel, and he's talking about energy in the state of Florida. But I said, I have a righteous anger for these jellybacks that don't stand up and won't answer the call. This is no different in my mind, is that I understand you're a pastor and there's a burden. Juliana, we have a lay ministry. And sure, there's stress in life, and we get that. And I appreciate what you said about renewal. We need that. We need to restore. Yeah. But I don't think that the understanding of what's truly needed ever goes away. If you're going to step into that role again, or you're coming back after a break, you know exactly what's going to be required of you. And I have to ask myself this question every day. It's a gut check for me. I was like, what would Jesus do? It's like, no, I ask it in a different way. Am I doing what he would expect me to do? Because he told me in the Beatitudes exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I measuring up to what he would expect, what Father would expect from me as a leader?
Amen.
And a man in this fight, which is why Juliana says all the time, it is hard for her sometimes to sleep because she thinks about the babies. We have a grandson that's 2, and we have him a couple of days a week, and you look at him and you're like, we have pictures of when he's in the womb and everything. It's like, you would actually kill that and be, okay, that's healthcare or that's medical freedom or health freedom for a woman. And I don't mean to go off on it, Jason. I know you hear this a lot, and I know you feel it. It is so frustrating. But here, the good news is that you're in the fight. Many others are in the fight. We're in this fight. And what we told people, we said the same thing about New York City. It's not over. There are people fighting up there. There are believers fighting that battle. Yeah. This battle is not over. No. And if we stay committed, Father's going to deliver the victory.
Amen.
He just wants to make sure that we understand what's at stake.
Amen.
Okay,
Amen.
I'm off my soapbox,
Good.
Jason. How can people get in touch with you? What's happening? What do you need them to do? How can they support you? Let's go through all this stuff.
Amen. So get in touch with the White Rose Resistance. I would encourage everybody to get on the website, White Rose Resistance. Seth and those guys, get signed up, get connected. We're in the process of helping build out state chapters, local and regional chapters to get training and resources into the hands of God's people and into the church, so that they can engage and confront the culture of death. You know, one of the great things about Seth's film 1916 is the real purpose is it was for Christians, it was for churches, and the primary screening, the marketing that was done was to get this into churches so that pastors will show this in their church, because we want to embolden pastors. There are a lot of pastors out there that want to speak out more, they want to get involved, and a lot of times they don't know what to do, they don't know what's going on, and so much of the pro-life movement is sadly is also kind of weak, right? If you look at the political lobbying, big political lobbying groups, they're pushovers. You go to Washington D.C. and you talk to political pundits, they will say the pro-life political lobby and evangelical Christians in general are like the most easily manipulated, naive pushovers who take crumbs from the master's table. And so, I mean, we're so easily pacified. And one reason that we've been sort of wandering in the wilderness for 40 years on the abortion issue is because the pro-life movement has been so weak. So, with Seth and White Rose and another organization, we work with Operation Save America.
Yes.
I'm standing in the backs of giants, men. It used to be Operation Rescue, men that laid down their lives at the doors of abortion clinics, getting arrested and leading what was the largest peaceful civil disobedience movement in the history of our country, the rescue movement. As Christians, just simply saying babies are being murdered. How is a man supposed to respond to that, right?
Exactly.
So if you look at most pro-life organizations, and even in the church, it's largely women that are leading these ministries, and there's a place for that. We need mothers who provide us, who will come and provide assistance to moms in need, right? So supporting a local crisis pregnancy center is a beautiful thing. Caring for these moms, caring for the brokenhearted. Right? The church, a part of its role is let's be the hospital for the sick, right, the downtrodden, the needy. But there's a different, there's another aspect, right? The church is multidimensional, and there's a masculine aspect to the church that has been lost in our day. I mean, we talk about Christians, who fought and defended Europe from Islamic jihadists for hundreds of years. Right. Christian men that took the sword and went to the battlefield to protect their women and children, lest they be swept away as sex slaves and raped and pillaged under radical jihadists for hundreds of years. I mean, there was a masculine Christianity. When you look back through the history of the church, men stood up and met threats with a fortitude that we just don't see enough of today. Right. And so when we talk about abortion, we talk about babies being literally murdered, their body parts being sold in the black market. We talk about a horrific institution like Planned Parenthood that is seducing our children, that is putting their tentacles into every avenue of society to get the heart of your children, right, and just diabolical. Men, you need to stand up and fight that. Don't allow the women to go and pastors, there needs to be a masculine voice decrying that evil and saying, stand up and fight. Your children's future is at stake. Your children's life is at stake. The lives of children, the weak, the helpless, the vulnerable children of our culture are being seduced and exploited and killed by this wickedness. And where are the men to stand up and confront it? Amen. And so White Rose Resistance, Operation Save America, other great organizations that we partner with and work with, get plugged into a church where there's masculine leadership. If you're a church leader hearing this and you've kind of been waffling on the issue, or you're unsure of how to address it, you want to be compassionate, you don't want to be seen as too harsh, listen, find the proper balance. We need a strong voice of confronting evil. That is love. That's what love demands. We must confront this evil and protect the weak and vulnerable in very tangible ways, and get plugged into a ministry that has a strong masculine voice. There's millions of men out there that don't know where to get connected. They go to church, it's largely female, feminine ministries. They don't know how to get plugged in. They look at pro-life organizations. Again, largely it's feminine voices, and again, the feminine voices are beautiful. We need it. We need both male and female, but a lot of men just don't know where and how to get plugged in, and a lot of pastors, I think, don't get the support and encouragement that they need in that realm to find their masculine voice. And so that's a part of what White Rose is trying to do, is to fill that void and to be a masculine voice in the movement that will meet this evil with strength and courage. And so go to White Rose Resistance, join, sign up, get plugged in, get connected to local guys who you can get the training and the resources to get involved in this fight. It's so desperately needed.
Jason Storms, love and appreciate you, brother.
RC, bless
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
all you do, man.
Keep fighting, brother. Very
All
much
right.
appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
All right, we are a little late, but we are nonetheless live. Episode 2 of the Spin Cycle. I am Andrew Southwick. He is RC Williams of Watchmen Action. You can also find us on Culture Crossroads. That airs every Sunday evening, 5 p.m. Central Time. BeckTV.plus. You can also find the clips, goodies, segments at our YouTube, Culture Crossroads, at Culture Crossroads 316. I know there's a lot of different show names, but the Spin Cycle is just this. It's some extra content every day where we respond, we react to some of the headlines and try to bring the truth, not the narrative, but the truth. What can we confirm? What is not confirmed? What is hype? What is spin? We want to get rid of all that stuff and then hopefully cut through the noise. You can do as you want with the information, but the point is you have clear and true information. So, RC, man, it's been a long time. It's been, I don't know, a little more than 24 hours. Are you okay?
It's like it was yesterday.
It's almost like, yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. Oh my goodness.
Andrew, doing great. I was just thinking about yesterday's episode 1. And by the way, the show also airs at 9:30 p.m. Eastern on weeknights on the brand new Watchmen Action Network. That's channel 40 on the Epic cable system in North Dakota, soon coming to Roku TV, Tubi TV, Pluto TV, and all those other TVs as well. So now the Spin Cycle has a slot on TV just like that.
There you go. We're growing by the minute every day. We appreciate the new channel subscribers from yesterday.
Yes.
And there have been several across our different platforms. We appreciate those checking out the shorts, just taking their time to spend some time with us. And we certainly appreciate it. So let's get into this, what I think are some of the headlines today. And RC, you brought this up, of course. There is this cyclospora parasite that has infected our produce and is causing what is popularly described as explosive diarrhea. As of the CDC's latest report, July 9th, 843 laboratory-confirmed domestically acquired cases, 86 hospitalizations, no reported deaths, cases reported across 31 states, more than 1,500 additional cases awaiting analysis and classification. And illness onsets ranged from May 1st through July 5th. And the CDC expects the numbers to rise due to reporting lag, and illness onset can sometimes be delayed by 6 weeks, I guess. I don't know how they're figuring that out. But apparently, obviously, some of the recent numbers in the headlines have been 3,000 sickened, 4,000 sickened. We're seeing reports of perhaps the epicenter in Michigan, maybe with lettuce.
Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out, she ordered the test to her door and did it at home. She had real answers before the week was out. No waiting room, no half-day gone. 360phi.com. Real answers from home. She knew something was off the moment she woke up and didn't want to deal with the health center. She opened her phone, answered a few questions, and had a prescription ready before her roommate even got up. Handled from her room. 360phi.com. Real care. No waiting room.
on and so forth. But I don't think really anybody knows. As of July 14, 3,309 cases as of July 14th. That is, what is today? Is this the 15th? So no, that's of today. I don't even know what day it is. Let me tell you. Well, that's going on. And apparently there's only 40 or 50 cases in a typical year. That doesn't necessarily mean anybody's hiding cases. It's weird. I just think there's a lot of lag in reporting. There are some questions about this, though, and why it's taken so long. For example, why has there not been a recall of anything? Normally, when there is any kind of food contamination, we know right away what product it is. Stores pull it off the shelves. We're all instructed to go check our fridges and pantries and look at the expiration dates or the serial numbers or whatever QR numbers they might have, identifying numbers, so that we can identify those products and get them out of the house. But apparently, this is just a drip, drip, drip that's going to go on and on and on. RC, what are you seeing on your end?
You know, Andrew, my concern around this is what it always is when it has to do with the CDC. I mean, we went through this with COVID, where there's either lag time or it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. My concern, Andrew, some of the stories I've heard around the fertilizer on the lettuce and other things that have been affected, that there's a human component to that. And there have been stories floating around. We've covered some of them and ripped from the headlines that human waste is being used as fertilizer in addition to animal waste, which traditionally that's how fertilizer starts. But the human element is something that keeps coming up. I don't know that they're directly correlated, but it is strange to me how these things happen, right? And you go from 50 or so cases a year into the thousands. I think getting to the root of what happened there is important. And right now, it's almost like so much of the product has been moved that they can't tell you, hey, go in your fridge and throw it out. Because, Andrew, honestly, I don't think that they know everything that's been impacted. I think there's going to be more to this than we know. And the best they can tell you is basically cook your vegetables.
What we're hearing as to how this parasite gets on food, at least in past years, it's through like fecal contaminated water that's sprayed on the crops, and then that goes to the store. So, for example, if it's on lettuce, one of the ways the Wizards of Smart are telling us to protect ourselves or to prevent the illness is to peel off the first few layers of lettuce to get those outer layers off, and then wash it as normal. The more difficult foods are things like raspberries or uncooked broccoli, cauliflower, that have a lot of nooks and crannies where the parasite can get in and hide. Michigan investigators say the available evidence indicates that lettuce or salad greens may be a potential source, but they have not identified a specific type of lettuce or green, a particular brand. There's no grower, there's no distributor, there's no supplier, there's no processing plant. And other foods have not been ruled out either. This, according to Michigan.gov. So it is curious, and it's curious as to the widespread nature of it as well. But I'm not saying curious as in necessarily conspiracy theory, and they're all trying to kill us. But it is curious.
It is, Andrew, and I think we see this in a couple of different areas. It exposes some of the fundamental weaknesses of our system and our structure, and given the things that have happened over the years, that when you look back at them, you say, wow, how much gross incompetence played a part in this. I mean, I think we learned that from 2020 beyond. There was an agenda, obviously, but we had such gross incompetence at so many levels that you think to yourself, man, it's a good thing that it wasn't mass fatality, because we'd all be dead. Just on a slightly lighter note, they say, hey, peel back the first layer. Look, man, in this economy, most people can't afford to peel off that layer and just throw it away. Right? Stuff's expensive, including lettuce. Like,
again, not to make light of serious situations, but this struck me as funny this morning. The first story that I read about this had to do with Taco Bell removing lettuce from their products, and and I mean the amount of jokes about how Taco Bell already has a long history with human digestive issues.
Yes.
What struck me as especially hilarious. No offense, Taco Bell. We've all eaten there. We get it. But it's not like they're unfamiliar with
I
that
mean,
type
it
of thing.
is, yeah, that is kind of a thing with Taco Bell. I mean, you could change the name of it to ED, explosive diarrhea. Taco Bell, please don't sue me. But I mean, yeah, it has a long storied history. It's interesting that they said, let's pull the fresh ingredients and, yeah, so we don't catch a buzzsaw. But, Andrew, I think obviously people, you want to pay attention to these things, and it's hard to tell at this point. It's always, when people ask me about, oh, are you worried about said contaminant or anything else? And I'm like, listen, here's the challenge. By the time you figure it out, by the time you find out what's going on, it's already made its way around the world. Anything can get around the world in a day or less at this point. And, I think being conscious of it is important. But I think we also have an accountability thing. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with governance and even with the CDC and some of our other agencies, whether it's at the federal level or the state equivalents. We have to be paying attention. And I think that, as we talk about what's going on with Lindsey Graham and some of the other stuff here with Iran, the vigilance that's necessary in a self-governing society is really starting to show itself at this point. And, people complain about those who represent them. I think you have to ask the hard question: how'd they get there? They got there because we weren't vigilant. People say big money interests and everything. Look, I get that. But again, it goes back to vigilance. How does that big money get in? We did a piece on Byron Donalds and his stock trades late last week. And if you follow the money that's even financed him and you get to the Club for Growth, I mean, follow the money, right? You've basically got 4 or 5 people who control potentially a large outcome in a gubernatorial election for one of the largest states in the country. Our level of vigilance is important here. If too many people are watching, people won't try to get away with things. It's like the old adage, an armed society is a polite society. This is no different. If a lot of people are paying attention, people are much less inclined to do things that they shouldn't be doing or try to pull a fast one. And I think people need to be reminded of that, even in this instance, because my questions obviously go to the CDC. But within the state of Michigan, I want to know where that contaminated water is coming from, who's in charge of that. And without completely tightening my tinfoil hat, I would ask people to take a correlation and look at what happened with the LA fires. When we finally started to figure out who was in charge of things and you got one look at them, you knew exactly why there were so many problems. We end up with some of the strangest and most incompetent people many times in these roles because they generally don't have a high level impact until something bad happens. And then you figure out the person who runs these things has absolutely no clue or any experience in the area that they work in. Not saying this is the case, but it's certainly worth looking into.
We got to move to the next story, but I do want to say, well, I don't want to say anything because I lost my thoughts. So we're moving right along. Potential Lindsey Graham conspiracy here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I know this, but this. Okay, so this is this has been going around. It's a viral post. I've seen some of it on X, some of it on Facebook, that claims that former CIA analyst Larry Johnson has said that Senator Lindsey Graham could not have returned from Ukraine in time to suffer his medical emergency at his Washington home Saturday evening. The posts, I'm summing them up, but effectively they say the Ukraine trip plus return journey makes an 8:30 p.m. arrival impossible, and then presents the assertion that Pentagon insiders know the truth, that Lindsey Graham died in Kiev, and the cover story is already exposed by simple schedules. Let's see, Johnson made the allegation during an online interview on YouTube entitled "Lindsey Graham Died in Ukraine and U.S. Covered It Up." But on balance, there are no other documents, no name Pentagon, Pentagon sources, flight records, witness testimony, anything like that. What is confirmed, we do know that the Graham was publicly photographed and recorded in Kiev on Friday, July 10th, meeting with President Vladimir Zelensky, and they talked about air defense requirements. They talked about sanctions on purchasers of Russian oil. They talked about continued American support from Ukraine. And Graham's office also issued a July 10th announcement that he and other senators had reached an agreement with the Trump administration to advance legislation targeting purchasers of Russian oil and natural gas. So, but this comes down to a timeline now that we don't really know. There's evidence that places Lindsey Graham in Washington. There's Fox Carolina published photographs showing emergency personnel delivering him to George Washington University on late Saturday.
Most growing businesses are making seven-figure decisions on gut feel and assumptions. The biggest companies in the world don't operate that way. Neither should you. Sherlock gives you market intelligence they pay six figures for. We find your buyers before your competitors do. Visit investinanswers.com to learn more. He had a good business, solid product, good people. He just couldn't figure out why growth had stalled. Sherlock found the buyers he didn't know were looking. Now he knows exactly where to go next. Learn more at investinanswers.com.
She knew something was off the moment she woke up and didn't want to deal with the health center. She opened her phone, answered a few questions, and had a prescription ready before her roommate even got up, handled from her room. 360phi.com. Real care. No waiting room.
When you choose Patriot Mobile, you're not just picking a wireless provider. You're choosing a company that shares your values. It's easy to switch, and you can keep your number, your phone, and most importantly, your values. With Patriot Mobile, you get the power of nationwide coverage on all three major networks. That means wherever life takes you, we've got you covered on the same reliable networks you already know and trust. And when you need us, we're here for you right here at home. Our customer service is 100% US-based because we believe that support should come from people who understand you and your values. At Patriot Mobile, you're not just another call, you're a priority. In today's world, where you spend your money matters more than ever, every dollar is a vote for the kind of future you want to build. Join the thousands of Americans making a difference with every call, every text, and every connection. Choose a company that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Night. District of Columbia, DC's fire and EMS radio traffic reportedly recorded the first emergency dispatch to Graham's Washington residence shortly after 8 p.m., and that was for the cardiac arrest. Apparently there was a telephone call minutes before Graham became ill. So we don't have anything that would tell us there's a cover-up going on. However, what remains legitimately unanswered is Graham's precise departure time from Kiev, his ground route out of Ukraine, the airport from which he flew, what kind of plane was he traveling on? Was it government, military, chartered, that kind of thing? We don't know exactly when he got to Washington. We don't have the full 911 call and EMS chronology. We don't have the reason the FBI remained involved after the preliminary medical finding, and we don't have the final medical examiner's report and toxicology. That would provide really a complete and independently verifiable timeline. So all we have really is, an assertion that someone is covering this up that's going viral, but that is what we can verify. That's what we can verify. So if you're seeing these bounce around the internet, if there's some there, that will show up. But right now we don't have that.
Andrew, I mean, I at first I thought he was traveling with President Trump on Air Force One, but obviously that wasn't the case. Okay, fine. Like, is there a conspiracy? Are they trying to cover up the fact that he died in Ukraine? I mean, look, the fact remains, as best we can tell, the guy's actually dead. Okay. And his sister has already been appointed to take his seat. I guess for the sake of closing the loop, yeah, sure. And if he did, in the event, die in Ukraine, why would the U.S. government feel the need to cover that up? Fine. I think following up on what I said yesterday, though, these are the distractions that concern me when we have bigger fish to fry. And anytime I hear something like this, the first thing I do is I look at other parts of the news cycle or the spin cycle to figure out what's trying to be slid by while people are distracted. We lost a sitting senator. There's a process for that, where I said today the flag outside is at half-mast. I can appreciate that, right? Didn't particularly agree with Lindsey Graham on most of his positions, and that's fine too. He's passed on. Okay, great. And his seats, he's already had someone appointed to his seat for the remainder of his term, and there is a process. I don't know that rehashing this does anything else except suck people down a rabbit hole. And interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of that with conservative media right now in general. It's like all these rabbit holes that just distract you on things where it's like, That should have been solved a long time ago. Why is it all of a sudden relevant? What are you distracting me from? And our audience, Andrew, whether it's Culture Crossroads, Watchmen Brief, or even now the Spin Cycle, you guys look beyond the spin and figure out what's going on. Eventually, we'll figure it out, but it's
And
not
with these
important.
rabbit holes, yeah, we talk, and again, if anybody, checks out our, Culture Crossroads or Watchmen Action, we do get into things that are in some cases are conspiracies,
Yeah.
but it's really pattern recognition, and also an understanding, a spiritual understanding of human nature, and our tendencies are bent towards evil and doing destructive things. And so we just look at that and say, listen, if it's like watching a wave come in from the shore. You can see it all the way out, in the ocean, and you can say, hey, that's going to keep approaching the shore, and it's going to land about right here. You can see the water line oftentimes, from the on the sand. It's the same thing. It's much different than putting up, an assertion and then not providing anything to back that up at all. And as you're talking about, that then becomes a distraction, because now we dig further into unfortunately, our tribalism camps, and we end up, majoring on the minors quite a bit.
Yeah. I encourage people, don't fall for the shiny object syndrome. Don't do it.
All right. Well, let's move from that to, has America done its job in Iran? What? This is a legitimate question.
No, I know it is. I'm just.
In a Breitbart clip, Republican Kansas Senator Roger Marshall argues that Iran's military and nuclear capabilities have weakened enough that regional government should assume responsibility for what comes next. What Marshall claimed effectively was that the United States has, quote, defanged Iran, unquote, that Iran is unlikely to obtain a nuclear weapon in the immediate future, which President Trump, by the way, said that the nuclear dust or whatever the minerals are that are underground are so far underground that only America has the tools to get them out. Now, that was also a claim that was made a year ago as well, but I digress. Marshall goes on to claim that Gulf nations now have a responsibility to finish the job, quote unquote. The Gulf countries should be prepared to deploy their own ground troops, and that American soldiers should not lead a ground invasion or occupation. And Marshall did say, and direct quote, "We've done our job." Have we done our job? What is our job? We were told that we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They didn't have one before. We were told that it was underground, and we decimated all their materials and all their ability to make a weapon. Then we had to go in to make sure they didn't have a nuclear weapon. And then for months it was, we've got a deal, we don't have a deal, we've got a deal, we don't have a deal. Memorandum of understanding that lasts for about 4 seconds, not even enough time for the ink to dry. And now we're back on again, and now we're hearing that we've done our job and they don't have a weapon. President Trump also said the same thing in a press conference last week. But we don't. What's the end game here? What are we doing? If it's nuclear, if they're not supposed to have a nuclear weapon, haven't we now accomplished that goal?
Boy, where do I even start here? So let me start with a bit of levity. Let's have a little fun. It's almost like we have a coordinator to coordinate the coordinating that reports to the director of coordination, who reports to the chief coordinating officer, which is why it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. So, I mean, this is obviously littered with problems. And let me go back to something I said at CPAC this year in Dallas that made for the fastest we have to go to break on Steve Bannon's War Room, probably in the history of the show. I said at that time, with regard to the Iran war, Trump is fighting a two-front war. The first one, well, not a war, I'm sorry, an engagement, whatever they're calling it now, is he's got the battle that's in front of him, okay, that's happening in Iran. But he's also got the court of public opinion. And Americans' appetite for conflict is limited because we have problems internally that we need to deal with, which is why the day that I was on War Room, or we were supposed to be on, they preempted with the cabinet meeting because I said, President Trump is trying to get out in front of whatever's about to happen next. The other thing I said at that point is that you have to take a boxing analogy to heart here. If you are in the ring with a bum, you need to knock him out in the first round. If you let a bum hang with you in the ring, they will hurt you. So what's happened? You let a bum hang around in the ring with you. Now you're into the 12th or 13th round, and you're still trying to put them away. But now they're encouraged because they haven't been stomped out yet. If you're going to do the thing, you got to do it. Final point, Andrew, about the senator's comment about Gulf countries going in and doing it. Steve asked me this question on the show. He said, why won't the Arabs fight? I said, because that's what they pay us to do. Right? The Saudis, the whole deal for oil in the Middle East is predicated on the U.S. providing protection. Will these Middle Eastern countries eventually do something? They probably should, and Saudi Arabia has already said that they would contribute or participate in that process. But that's a tough road to hoe when Big Daddy's in the mix and he's supposed to be handling business. And then you look and say, well, wait a minute. The deal for us taking payment for oil in U.S. dollars is predicated on the U.S. being security and kind of being the mob muscle to make sure things stay in order. Andrew, it's like the song that will drive you insane. It just won't stop, and you want it to.
It's important to be clear that the United States has not actually concluded its military role. CENTCOM said American forces, this according to Reuters, American forces completed another 5-hour wave of strikes against targets in Bushehr, Chabar, Jask, Konarak, Abu Musa, and Bandar Abbas. The operation marked the third consecutive night of renewed U.S. attacks. According to the AP, the strikes targeted coastal defense systems, missile installations, drone sites, and Iranian maritime capabilities, with the stated objective of reducing Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping and regional targets. And now, of course, the war has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz. The central battlefield is no longer limited to Iran's nuclear facilities. It's become increasingly a war over the control of the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump saying, I believe it was yesterday, that we intend to set.
He had a good night. And then a morning thought he couldn't shake. Opened his phone, answered some questions, had a provider review it. Whatever he was worried about, he handled it. No office, no awkward waiting room, just done. 360phi.com. Your phone, your business.
She knew something was off the moment she woke up and didn't want to deal with the health center. She opened her phone, answered a few questions, and had a prescription ready before her roommate even got up, handled from her room. 360phi.com. Real care. No waiting room. Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out, she ordered the test to her door and did it at home. She had real answers before the week was out. No waiting room, no half-day gone. 360phi.com. Real answers.
Shop in the Strait of Hormuz and charge fees for people to go through it in the midst of Iran attacking ships that are coming through that strait. We're worrying about freedom of commercial navigation, again, through the Strait of Hormuz, Iranian oil exports, Gulf state security, and the cost of protecting international shipping. And again, a reminder, the Strait of Hormuz normally carries roughly 1/5 of the globally traded crude oil and natural gas. And so Iran's ability to threaten or attack shipping remains one of Tehran's strongest forms of leverage. RC, when this started, there wasn't any tolls or anything like that going through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, obviously, that has shifted. You have to think that part of that is because I think the Trump administration knows not just domestic oil prices and gas, but also I think part of the global economy and certainly America's economy is not exactly as strong as they might like people to believe. And they can't allow, now we're in it so deep, we can't allow the Strait of Hormuz to go haywire and sideways, especially coming out of, if we're trying to come out of this thing looking like we are winning.
Andrew, to take a line from the world famous Gordon Gekko in the classic movie Wall Street, I am up to my backside in more nuts than a fruitcake right now. Just being honest. It feels like Abbott and Costello. Who's on first? This goes back like our prior story when we were talking about what's going on with the outbreak, right? I ask myself hard questions. the best and the brightest, in particular when it comes to our military and our capabilities. We are the strongest, most powerful military in the world. How does an operation that has this many moving parts but has a very clear and distinct purpose not get executed nearly flawlessly by the most powerful military apparatus in the history of the world? So I have to start there. And then I ask myself, if that doesn't happen, how can we not, being as advanced as we are, go and fix those problems and get this thing done? Let me explain to everyone simply. This is what happens when you're not looking for a landmine in a field full of landmines and you step on one. Guys, look, and this is us kind of spin cycle. This is a lot of what happens off the air that you don't see on the TV shows. Until we are willing to call a spade and ask these hard questions very practically and actually keep asking until we get an answer, you will have a perpetual battle in Iran that will mirror Afghanistan or the Iran-Iraq war, or take your pick, right? And I think what people underestimate, and listen, I'm not a fan of Iran or what they do or the theocracy of the government. I'm not, so please don't take it that way. But you have to understand that the ideology that exists here is empowered when they can take what they deem the great Satan and keep them in perpetual battle. If you're going to knock a bum out, knock him out. If you're not, don't fight.
Well, here's the other thing that I would add too. I think that we're underestimating against Iran. You mentioned, they want to take out the great Satan. They want to take out the little Satan. But they also the Islam belief, they want to bring about the 12th Imam, and they believe to hasten the 12th. And if you look at how they describe the 12th Imam, it's effectively, they took that from how the Bible describes the Antichrist, and they want to bring this 12th Imam and hasten the coming of the 12th Imam. I think one of the things that we may be underestimating, at least it looks like from our perspective, is honestly the spiritual aspect of this. This is not just about making a deal to survive to the next day, which I believe is where Trump comes from. I think where we've underestimated the Middle East, even to Bush 43, is their spiritual belief and conviction in what they're doing. And if you don't meet that with an equal spiritual conviction into what you're doing and an objective to come away with, and by the way, go back, other than maybe Desert Storm and at least the pretense of after 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, when have we had since World War II an actual, this is what we're going in to do, and here's our objective, and here's what we're going to do. And listen, if you want to know more about that, YouTube channel, Culture Crossroads 316, go through some of the former videos there. I did a breakdown of the war powers since World War II. We have not ever, Congress has constitutionally is the one that declares war. We have not had an official declaration of war since World War II, which means every war we've been in, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iran, Afghanistan, none of it has been actually constitutionally started. And that matters because now President Trump has formally informed Congress that hostilities resumed on July 7th, and the administration maintains that this means it's a new 60-day period under the War Powers Resolution. So what that means is if a president effectively goes to war, he's got 60 days to bring it before Congress to get a resolution.
Right.
Well, what happened is that MOU came at the 60-day mark, and all of a sudden we have a ceasefire, except it wasn't a ceasefire. And now we're starting again to start the clock over. I'm not an Iran apologist in any stretch of form. Their government is evil. Their regime is evil. They should be wiped off the face of the earth. I absolutely agree. I don't know why we don't go to Congress and get that declared and do this right. And it should have been, and I think we have the firepower and the strength, and if we would muster the will, which I don't know that we have, to win, I think we could have done it probably in a couple of weeks, as Trump boasted early on. But now what it looks like is we're going through loopholes to keep this thing going for reasons I don't think that are yet clear, because the objective seems to shift as we go, and the objective seems to shift in ways that are like we're cleaning up the mess that we're making along the way and then pretending that our cleanup is the goal every time a new mess. Does that make sense? Every time we have a new mess that comes out. And again, I'm not. Hi, Evelyn. Good to see you. We see you in the chat there on YouTube. Thanks for checking us out for a few minutes. Again, this is not I don't support our troops. I don't support, crying out loud. But we have to be able to look at things honestly and objectively and just say, and we should be allowed, and we are, in fact, as we the people, allowed to ask these questions and say, look, it looks like you went in here for reasons, I don't know what. You decided it was going to be to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, which previously you had said that we destroyed them anyway. So why is that? We go back and forth on whether or not we have a deal or don't have a deal. We finally get some kind of deal in place that isn't a real deal. That probably, if I'm going to look at this, and if I'm going to look at that MOU in history, it looks like that was a stopgap, an excuse to be able to restart the 60-day clock because we weren't going to go to Congress and get a declaration of war officially, which means we really don't have an effective objective that we can say, hey, this is what we're doing, here's what we're going to do, and this is what you look for when the signs of victory. It was keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Now they're all saying they can't get a nuclear weapon, but now we've got to clean up on aisle 7, the Strait of Hormuz, which is a mess that was collateral damage from doing this in the first place. I'm sorry that I went long on there, but that's, I don't know. Help me understand.
No, I'm with you. And I think I can speak for both of us in talking about how we feel about members of the military, soldiers, right? To the point where we are so convicted and so behind the people who volunteer, by the way. In the U.S., military service is not mandatory. You volunteered to do that. We are so behind them that we want them to all be home safe. That's how behind them we are, okay? Just following this logically. You don't want to put someone in harm's way unless it's absolutely necessary. And, to your point, Andrew, about the cleanup on aisle 7, how much resource drain does this become? And what's the competence level of the people running these things? No disrespect, because I'm not a military person. I did not serve. But I have to ask the hard question, right? Because I'm a citizen of the nation, and I have a right to do so because, in part, I'm financing what's going on there. And it is okay for me or for you or for anyone watching this or anyone who will ever watch this to ask those questions and demand answers from the people you send to represent you, Andrew. That's the answer.
Some uncertainties remain. We're a little bit over time. We're going to wrap up here. And our friend Billy Elliott from yesterday did mention we need to cover Conor McGregor and whether or not he was injured. We're going to have to save that for maybe tomorrow because we're up on time here. But some uncertainty. Uncertainties in Iran that remain. How much enriched material has survived in terms of nuclear material? Did Iran disperse equipment or personnel before the attack? Were they hiding stuff? I mean, that was one of the big theories when George W. Bush went into Iraq was, Saddam moved everything. Mm-hmm. Are there any undeclared or underground facilities? Now, if you hear the Trump administration, then at least the posture they're sending in the media is the answer is no, that we've obliterated everything. And the only nation that can reach any of their materials would be America because we're the only ones that has the tools to go that far underground. Is Iran able to rebuild parts of the program still? For example, that was one of the criticisms of the MOU was we unfroze $300 billion. Of course, they're going to rebuild their program with that. We know this. But can they? After this round of attacks, does the increasing military pressure make Tehran more determined to develop another deterrent at some point? And then who's going to inspect and verify any future agreement? Even Marshall himself acknowledged that he acknowledged reports that Iran is attempting to rebuild that from Breitbart. So at best, maybe the nuclear threat has been delayed, but it's hard to say that because we keep hearing that we've decimated it all. And then, if we've done that, then again, you go back to what are we doing? It's so upside down. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I know that, Hardcore MAGA is going to say, hey, it's 3D chess, it's 5D chess, it's whatever it is. But at some point, we need some clarity and some straight answers, because this affects the world. It affects every one of us as Americans. It affects everyone in that region. And, we have our sons and daughters and brothers and sisters engaged in this battle. Some of them lost their lives, a few of them earlier in this war. We need to know what we're doing. We need to identify the objective, and then we need to execute it. I believe we can. I'm just not sure we know what it is.
Andrew, if you are not willing to hold the people who represent your interests accountable, they will represent their own interests, and you get what you deserve. I want that to stick with everybody, because that's an important point here as to why all of this is happening. That does require you to do the work and ask hard questions. I'm not mocking anybody watching this. What I'm saying is you actually need to put in the effort to see things change. And if you're not asking questions, nothing's going to change, because that's translated to the people who are doing this, that they can just continue to do whatever they want. And as our good friend Bill Federer says, silence equals consent.
Well, with that, RC, we better wrap it up right here. We'll be back with you tomorrow. RC, do we know what time? I know you're on site, so it's more up to you than me.
Yeah, I think we'll probably just do the 12:45, 1 o'clock area. I think that's working good for us.
All right, 12:45, 1 o'clock, late lunchtime. You can spend it with us here on the Spin Cycle again. We are not looking at the narrative. We're not looking at the spin. We're not even looking at political bias as much as we can help it. Yes, we are politically conservative. Yes, we believe in Jesus Christ, and so that is our worldview. But we just want to look at the facts. What are they? What are we dealing with? And help equip you with those same facts. So thank you for being with us. Again, our other channels, let me put them back up here on our stream. They're going to come at you. They're not really separated very well, but I can't do anything about that right now. But YouTube, you can find at Culture Crossroads 316. Lots of goodies there at Culture Crossroads 316. You can find me on Facebook, The Culture Crossroads with Andrew Southwick, as well as Andrew Southwick Official. We encourage you to like or follow the pages or whatever it is you do over there. Subscribe on the YouTube channels, and also for RCs as well. And Watchmen Action, find that on YouTube, find that on Facebook. Like and subscribe there. And of course, our main programs, Watchmen Brief, you can find that, and Culture Crossroads every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central on BeckTV.plus, and the Watchmen Action Network, which is available on the Epic Cable, Epic Cable, and you can get it. Yeah, I think you can download that too on Roku as well. So lots of places to find us, lots of content. This is a ship that is just leaving port. We are growing. And so again, thanks for spending some time with us. As always, leave your comments, what you think, your thoughts about our thoughts in the comment sections, wherever you are. We're happy to read them. Do try to keep it civil. Do try to keep it family friendly. But we appreciate you being with us. So RC, anything that I forgot in that last little bit?
No, you covered it all, my friend. All things Watchmen Action at watchmenaction.org as well.
All right. We'll see you next time.
guys, you know Juliana and I and what we do, so let's be honest. The healthcare system has become a maze of red tape and sky-high costs. That's why we want you to check out Altrua Health Share. That's a community of people helping people. Now, Altrua isn't insurance. It's a faith-based health sharing community where members cover one another's medical needs, not corporate profits. Okay, important stuff. You'll get access to over 1 million providers nationwide, and you can save thousands of dollars a year based on what you're dealing with now. It's time to take control of your health care. So here's what we need you to do. We need you to go to altruahealth.org/Watchmen. That's altruahealth.org/Watchmen. And when you get there, use the promo code FREEDOM100 for an additional discount. Or you can give them a call and discuss the options. 512-717-4639. That's 512-717-4639. altruahealth.org/Watchmen. Make sure to tell them the Watchmen sent you. Welcome back to the Watchmen Brief. This is R.C. Williams. We are live at America Reads the Bible 2026. We're at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. A special treat joining us on the show, Eric Dallenbach. Sir, welcome.
Oh, I'm honored to be with you.
So you are in charge at Florida Family Voice.
Yes, sir.
So we had Craig DeRoche on from FPA, and so we've talked to some folks today, but in particular because we are Floridians.
Yes.
Talk to us about
the free state of Florida.
Thank you very much. The free state of Florida.
Yeah, no
so let's talk a little bit about you and your background, and let's talk about Florida Family Voice and what's going on there.
Sure. Well, as far as background goes, I mean, I just spent the last 7 years working for Governor DeSantis in his executive office on his leadership team, and I think the way I view things is that if you work that hard on something, you'd like to believe that what you worked hard on was going to outlast whoever the next governor is, whatever administrations. And I think I had this unique vantage point in there to realize the power of the church when the church is engaged in doing what she's created to do. And so my feeling was, what's the best place I could go to continue that fight? And we believe that was Florida Family Voice. You mentioned Craig DeRoche. Florida Family Voice is very impactful in Florida, but what Craig helps us do is be very impactful across the nation with the 40 states that are doing it. So it's kind of, if we sat down long enough, you would know that my theme of life is together we are stronger. I mean, that's just very individually, we're very, very quiet. We're quiet to government, we're quiet to most things, but if we bond together, we can actually do something.
So Eric, you when you were working with Governor DeSantis, and I think he reappointed you to the faith board. Is that correct?
Yes, another 4 years. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and see, you think about that, right? So that gives me 3 years with the new governor.
That's good.
So we can actually hold some lines of faith that you always wonder. You know, we're not concerned about who the candidates are, but you just don't know. So this helps us hold that posture of faith and keep Florida where we like it to be.
So Eric, when you were working with Governor DeSantis in that role before Florida Family Voice, you really made an effort going around the state, getting faith groups together and faith leaders together. Can you talk to us about the strategy behind that and kind of how that's played out over time?
Yeah, so that's a big question. I'm gonna try to be as brief. So I feel like my calling in life is not a vocation. I feel like my calling in life is to see the capital church, the capital C church, act like God intended it to be and remind them of what God created them to be.
Right.
And so you have to go back a couple jobs for me, which was I started the Tim Tebow Foundation with Tim in my guest room. And so I ran that for about 8 years.
Most growing businesses are making seven-figure decisions on gut feel and assumptions. The biggest companies in the world don't operate that way. Neither should you. Sherlock gives you market intelligence they pay 6 figures for. We find your buyers before your competitors do. Visit investinanswers.com to learn more.
She knew something was off the moment she woke up and didn't want to deal with the health center. She opened her phone, answered a few questions, and had a prescription ready before her roommate even got up, handled from her room. 360phi.com. Real care. No waiting room.
He had a good business, solid product, good people. He just couldn't figure out why growth had stalled. Sherlock found the buyers he didn't know were looking. Now he knows exactly where to go next. Learn more at investinanswers.com.
Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out, she ordered the test to her door and did it at home. She had real answers before the week was out. No waiting room, no half-day gone. 360phi.com. Real answers from home.
And during that time, we launched something called Night to Shine. It's a prom for people with special needs. And by the time I left, we had 500 churches, from 39 different denominations. And I didn't know. Truth be told, I had no idea there were 39 denominations.
Wow.
But 39 different denominations, all hosting a prom. And Tim and I really dug into that because it was like, well, wait a minute. We can't. I mean, if we're honest, it's hard to get churches to agree on anything,
Right.
let alone 39 of them. And what we realized is if we talked about who God is and we talked about who he told us to serve, which in that case was people with special needs, it was amazing how healthy the conversation could be. Truth is, you and I, if we debated 4 or 5 topics, there'd be something in theology, faith that we would not agree with, but
Right.
we would never disagree on who God is and who he tells us to serve. And so I bring that up to say, fast forward. So my next role was with Chris Tomlin, and we did that kind of concept when we started his foundation with foster care. And so I get to the governor's office, and the governor says something to the effect of, Eric, could we do Night to Shine for foster care? And what he meant by that was, can we show worth and value to foster care kids through the church? And I knew the answer was yes, but again, we had to go back to telling the church that government could be a government. By the way. Just want to pause on that.
Thank you.
Could be a catalyst to bring together churches into their core mission of serving the most vulnerable. This is a weird one, and I won't go off on this too long. But if people really think about what the church and good government do the same thing every day, they wake up and they desire to serve the most vulnerable of their community. And yet somehow, through a really bad definition of separation of church and state, the two groups that serve the most vulnerable have stopped talking. And so we believed in Florida that if we just opened a conversation, and you know how we started that? 2019, when I first got there, the governor and I co-signed a letter that was just a thank you note to the 17,000 churches of Florida.
Wow.
And we said, we don't even know exactly how you serve, but we know this. If you were not here, the communities would not be served, our government would implode. And so we just want to say thank you. And if you'll tell us who you serve and how you serve, we will make sure we open the gates. And that was a good start. The governor keeping our churches open and deeming them essential during COVID.
Amen.
Made us the free state of Florida.
Yes.
That was a big deal because the church that letter hit 2 weeks before COVID.
Wow.
And so we're telling them thank you. They've never heard thank you from the government. And then the governor got to kind of show what he meant, which was, I will stand behind you. So all of a sudden we were in this momentum lane. And we had 2,200 churches come together and say, we'll serve the most vulnerable through the government, which is crazy.
Unbelievable to me. It's amazing what we can do if we actually do what we're supposed to do. We were talking to folks earlier today, and we said, oh, well, they say the church shouldn't be involved with government. It's like, wait a minute, Father created government.
That's he created both.
Right?
He created government and the church, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so if he's saying that we're supposed to be involved, how is it that for some reason we've been led to believe that we shouldn't be involved?
Well, a few things. Number one, that's been a campaign of probably the enemy, but it's been a campaign of an opposition too that is real. I mean, it's tried to tell us that our voice is to be silenced. On top of that, my son right now is in school to be a pastor, and I'm not sure that we've done a very good job educationally or even as congregants coming around pastors and saying, I think a lot of pastors were trained in peacetime, and we're not really in peacetime. We're never in peacetime, but there's times that seem more peaceful. And so I think we have a couple things happening. One, we have a congregation that up until recently, wanted it to be about them and didn't want to hear real truth. Now you're seeing this revival that they're talking about, these young people returning. If I were to venture into that, I'd say I have 5 kids, but 2 of them are in their 20s. And I said, if you think about that kid since COVID, right, he's had the complete erosion of truth, news, science, medicine, things that the CDC, like if we were kids and the CDC said do something, we would have never thought, well, this could be politically motivated or privately funded. That just would have never crossed our mind.
100%.
And so these kids have seen an erosion of truth, and now they pick up a phone, they pick up a news source, and they're supposed to, in their 20-year-old brain, take 4 or 5 sources and compute truth out of that brain. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, I love my 20-year-olds. It's terrifying. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that they're returning to church. They're saying, tell me what that book says. Like, I want to know every word. Don't skip a word. Don't even the weird parts that seem to not apply to it. Read every word. Tell me what it says. And there's something rising up in people that says there is a boldness that comes with that. And so I just think we happen to be in a moment in time when God's doing all that, and we're just stepping into it in the way that he does. Because I promise you this is not a humility statement. I'm probably the least qualified person to do what I'm doing that you've talked to all day. And that's fine, because I think in that posture, I'm either too dumb or too stupid or just obedient enough to try things because I think so many things we just have to do it.
Yeah.
Like just get out and do it. I mean, your name, I love your name.
Thank you.
Right? I mean, like a watchman doesn't go into their watch knowing what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
They go into the watch looking for something. And then when they see that thing, they will determine what they're going to do. And that's being guided by God. And so I think it's probably kind of sums up a little bit of how I'm here as a dude that I'm like, I didn't know enough about government to know what we couldn't do.
That's it. But that's where the best servant leaders come from.
Well, whatever. Use me in that way. And again, I was around smart people, and government will tell you all the things they can't do.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you nailed it. Government was created by both. They wake up in the morning. I mean, God created government and church. They wake up in the morning desiring to serve the most vulnerable people if they're good at what they do. And I'll give you a model. I don't know if they can see my hands or not. But one of the things that was explained to me early in government is that government exists from the moment crisis ends, the moment crisis begins, the moment crisis ends. Right? Government by itself is limited. So if you think about foster care, they enter foster care, they exit foster care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the church, and this is where people get crazy. The church is prevention on the front end, love and compassion during, and community and reunification on the other side. So what's ironic is the church is limitless. It can be on any side at any point. Government's actually limited, and they're limited by scope and by money.
Right.
And so the funny part is with that definition of separation of church and state is that somehow the church came out thinking they're the limited ones. And the reality is government is the one that actually exists inside a box. Government doesn't do prevention. That's why they get made fun of for saying they always bail a boat. Good government will look upstream, but they don't have the money, resources, and people to do something. And so we just started saying to the church, we will give you what we have, which is we know. Don't go start a foster care movement without talking to us, because we know where those kids are. We know where they are before they hit the system.
Right.
And through privacy and all the things we can do, we started opening the door to letting churches see those kids before they hit the system. And if you can capture that kid and that family to be a church family before they have the worst moment of their life, you will change the trajectory. So if I were to say one thing that you may not know as a Floridian, so I want you to be proud of two things. One, we're the only state in the nation that had a role like mine in the executive office. So non-politically, Governor DeSantis' boldness on that was crazy.
That's true.
We were the only state. Secondly, we have reduced foster care by 47% in our state in 6 years. 47%.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about 12,000 kids that are no longer in, and we've cut the pipeline. And people are like, well, how'd you do it? It wasn't adoption and community reunification or family reunification. It was literally letting the church see upstream and do the thing they were made to do.
You know, it's interesting, Eric. Juliana says all the time that back when Jesus was walking the planet, the government didn't take care of the people took care of the people. And literally what you just described is the church stepping in and saying, look, the government says, we'll let you see what's coming, but you guys need to take on, or you can take on that role. And it actually works.
It's funny how his plan works.
Always works.
The crazy part about that is she's right?
Yeah.
Is that number one, there's two truths about that. One truth is there was a moment when the church was doing that. They abdicated that role. Government took that role. The problem is how do you read from that pesky little book and go, how do I not stay involved? And so then they got re-involved, but they didn't want to talk to government. And so we created, I will rattle people to say, neither the church nor government can fully and effectively, efficiently serve the most vulnerable without the other one. And people get all weird about that, but that's just the way it was set up. The structure was set up that way. And instead we've siloed.
Right.
And said, I'm going to do my own thing. It's like, well, are you crazy? Like, we're serving those exact people. And the second part of why she's right is because every major move of Christianity happened out of just loving and serving people. And so that, when you show up at the door of a human, this is what's happening in our state. What's happening in our state right now is a child protective investigator or caseworker walks in a home, they're making decisions, is the kid going to be removed or not? That's happening every day, all over the state. And now, if the number one removal of kids for tangible items in the state of Florida is just having a lack of beds, because it's required one bed per kid.
Oh.
So now I tell you that.
Right.
So you've just heard that. Now you've seen something you can't unsee, which will stick with you. And you'll go, I'd buy a bed. I'd build a bed. I'd give a bed. I mean, we can get beds out of our abundance. And that bed keeps that kid at home. So imagine now our caseworkers and CPIs have an app on their phone. They can say, they can't say the person's name, but mother, it's almost usually not a lot of dads around. Mother of two, needs a bed, needs a car seat, needs a changing table. They hit submit. It goes to every church in the area that has signed up. Okay. We have counties where churches are in 17 seconds. They're competing with one another to meet the need, and they're going to that home. So now they show up at the home after being certified and protected and all the things, government makes them do. And they show up with a bed. Well, guess what? They show up with a bed. They look around. Oh man, like I see things, they got a hole in the roof and a hole in the floor. But immediately that family becomes a church family, not a state family.
Right.
And we're not seeing the repeat of needs because the church goes, I've always wanted to know where you were. When I read Matthew 25, I've always wanted to know you, but I didn't know you, and government knew them. And so we're just opening that door.
So, Eric, I mean, whenever you decide, or Father decides that you're going to run for higher office, we'll obviously be there to support you, because you've got these things worked out.
He will have to be pushing me with a pitchfork to make me do that. But yes.
But I mean, just hearing this, I think it's so great for people to be able to get context around what's happened and how you've been able to help to steward that process. Because even in our short conversation here, you've enlightened me to the fact that, wait a minute, given the proper context, that makes a whole lot of sense. I think a lot of times, like you said, government's in this box and church feels like they can be, and people talk past each other.
That's right.
Instead of like, wait a minute, no, this actually works together if we do what we're supposed to do.
We try to overcomplicate everything.
Yeah, this is fascinating for me in this conversation. And I'm inspired.
Great.
By that.
I'm glad you're a Floridian.
Yeah.
I really am. I'm really glad about that.
I got to tell you, I'm inspired to speak for Juliana on this. I am inspired to hear that context. And that I'm glad you were reappointed to the board, because that leadership is needed. So how did you end up with Florida Family Voice? How did that all come about? What are you up to there?
Well, it was time to leave the governor's office because my time there was evolving and changing, and I needed to get someone in office there before I left that could stay for a while.
Okay.
I'd said I'd be there a year. I was there 7. So I did more than I thought I'd do. I wanted a place, and the governor knows this. So I admire him and the first lady more than you can imagine. I needed a place that I could continue the work we're doing without politics getting in the way.
Okay.
Because eventually what happened was the first lady, who's a dear friend of mine, got rumored to run for governor, as you know, in Florida. And then the political attacks started coming. The Speaker of the House, the governor got into some weird things. And I started having churches say, well, I don't want to get political. And it was like, well, no, we never were political. You're still not political. But I thought to myself, we need a place to continue this. And so as I started talking to the Florida Family Voice people, they were interested in having me come over there. And I said, I don't, it's not that I don't care about legislative members, but something changed in Florida, as you know. I mean, I know all Floridians know this. When Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 came out, we went from, it used to be you inform 160 politicians, you change bills.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, you needed millions of Floridians to come educated into a poll box. That, aside from civics lessons, is a terrifying thing because, again, where are they getting their truth? What do they come in feeling? And so I looked at it and thought the best place we can posture where this thing could live on is in a place that is Christian and would say we're always going to make much of the church. And that's our big thing, is that I believe this whole Nehemiah thing. Someone asked me the other day, they said, Eric, you think we'll always be fighting? So, well, if you think how battles work, the one time you don't have to fight is when your walls get rebuilt, right? So yes, of course, if you're standing on rubble, you will fight.
Yeah.
But if you rebuild the walls, and I'm convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that the walls are the church. And when the church stands in its rightful position, in its full upright rightful position, we as soldiers still stand behind it. We still keep it patched up and we still hold our sword because nothing changes there. But when the battle started changing in Florida with our amendments, we realized we needed to change the game of how we approached it.
It's one of those where it's like, I don't necessarily want you to stop talking. I understand you're like, hey, RC, I want to give it a chance here so you can ask another question, because there's so much of that's informative. So talk to us, Eric, because we're Floridians and majority of people who see this live in the state.
Yeah, it's great.
What are the initiatives for 2026 for you guys right now? What are the big hitters for us?
Well, we focus on 4 things. And so one, I've talked exhaustively about, which is making much of the church.
Yeah.
And, you got to do that, by the way, in slow one-on-one education, like just pastors emboldening pastors. 2 is we focus on making sure the 160 legislative members are informed. You want to have another one that's going to, I promise you will love this. How many bills do you think were put up for the legislative session that just passed? We do not, so 9 weeks in Florida,
right?
160 members. How many bills do you think they looked at?
100?
1,962.
Whoa.
Okay. No one knows that. Floridians don't know that. So we have people and programs that read every bill. And we found 147 of those bills had something to do with biblical worldview. That's how much happening in our state at any given moment. 147.
Wow.
And so we still have to pay a lot of attention to what the legislature knows, what they're doing, how they're educated, how they're informed. We spend a tremendous amount of time on educating young people. this whole thing collapses if our young people don't understand civics, basic
Right.
civics. And then this year we're in an election.
Mhm.
And so we will be heavy into the voter guide and candidate questionnaires and all that. I'm going to pose two things that bother me and
Yeah.
just sit in my mind and let you chew on this as we have our time.
Sure.
Two things I struggle with that we do as Christians,
Mhm.
right? So I'll frame it that way and say, one, Christians as a whole high five too long. We celebrate too long. An example of that would be Roe v. Wade gets overturned. We're all high fiving. 7 states have it in their constitutional amendment.
Yep.
That's a danger. We think there's some arrival point of battles and victories. And
Mhm.
so a lot of what you'll see us doing is posturing that never happens. Like we're trying to stay one step ahead. The second thing we do wrong, and this one I know your name implies, we do not build armies well in peacetime. We as nature are reactive. So Amendment 4 comes, we rally the troops. But if you think about that, it's like putting the armor of God on, running into battle. It's okay if you get it on in time, but it's not effective.
Mhm.
And so we are doing a ton right now in battle plan type mode to say, we know that post-DeSantis era is coming.
Mhm.
For every Floridian that's out there right now, post-DeSantis era is coming. And every one of us is wondering two things. I'll tell you the most common questions. What's he going to do? Which I won't answer on this. 'Cause I don't know. But, and then two, is what's our state going to look like?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is the church should not leave that up to politicians. Our state should look like what the church designs it to look like, because there's 17,000 Christian churches and one governor and 160 elected members who attend those 17,000 Christian churches. And so we're spending a lot of time trying to get this Watchmen concept of anything we can do to say, guys, we build now. And so that when they come back into the state of Florida and want to spend another $130 million to run an abortion amendment, we just look at them and like, you're out of your mind. We've got 5,000 churches that right now are going to rise up against you. You'll lose another $130 million. And so we're building armies now for what we believe is coming.
Wow. Talk about action. That's why, like, our name, the ministry is Watchmen Action.
I love it.
You have to be doing something with what you see.
Amen.
Eric, I think I've heard that laid out extensively from you in our short time together. Again, for me, this is a fascinating conversation. We're going to have to do one of those long forms that they do at some point,
anytime you
where
want.
we sit down we just sit at the table and we just talk and talk and talk. But I most certainly want people to know where they can get more information and how they can support you guys.
Yeah, look, we'd love it. Right now, we are building. Whether they're a pastor, if you're a pastor, I want to know you. If you're a pastor in Florida, I want to know you. If you're a person who can support us, which we need, because that's the other thing, we only fund things in wartime, which is a funny part too, right? We need consistent people to say we believe in peacetime building so that we don't have wartime, and they can do that at our website, which is www.fl for Florida, flfamily.org. And look, we'd love to have that. And look, I also don't think of prayer as a last resort. It really is a first response. And so when I'm like everything we're taking on, I've seen it. I've gotten the warfare. My Amendment 4 fight, I mean, I was sued, persecuted, chased, attacked. We drove in a bus. I had to have police security at all the times. I mean, so I did 70 speeches surrounding Amendment 4. There is evil that surrounds some of that stuff. And so I don't say lightly to the people there. I'd say, man, please pray. Like, our team needs it. Our staff needs it, but our marriages need it. Our kids need it. Because I've learned that Satan doesn't stop where he first attacks. He goes after everything. And so those would be the things that would be great.
Eric Dallenbach, what a pleasure, man.
Yeah,
what
thanks,
a blessing
man.
to
Great
see
to meet you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. We're live at America Reads the Bible 2026. We're in Washington, D.C. at the Museum of the Bible. We'll be back.
Hello again, friends, and welcome to another episode of Culture Crossroads. I am Andrew Southwick. He is R.C. Williams, and she, over there, Juliana Ormond. Watchmen Action, of course, watchmenaction.org. You can find everything they're doing there. They are coming to us live and on location from the International Christian Film Festival in the home state of Florida. My friends, good to see you this week. How is the festival. We're going to talk about it later on, but just how's things going where you are on location?
Andrew, it's great. You know, we're at the Doubletree SeaWorld in Orlando. This is our 4th International Christian Film Festival and the 14th overall. We saw the founder, Marty Jean-Louis, this morning, and the first question he asked us, he's like, this is number 4 for you. So he's got a game going on where, based on the face he sees, he has a pretty good idea of how many ICFFs you've been to, but it's great to have.
Excellent. Yeah, last year you were there. We brought interviews from, I'm going to forget his last name. This is why I really should have written this down. Remember our friend Casper that we talked to?
Yes, Casper McLeod, yeah.
Casper, thank you very much. I know. And he's like a legend too. And here I am.
Yes,
anyway.
he is.
But hopefully you can excuse me for a little bit of scatterbrainedness, because there is quite a bit going on in the news and news cycle and current event cycle. And that's what we want to kick off with here. And we're going to start, core question here. Are we facing in America a political violence problem or a spiritual disorder really showing up politically? Federal prosecutors, as many of you now will know, unless you're living under the last rock possible that has no even access to Starlink at this point. But federal prosecutors say 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen of Torrance, California, was charged after the April 25th, 2026 shooting incident at the White House Correspondents Association dinner. The DOJ says he faces charges including attempting to assassinate the president, transporting a firearm and ammunition across state lines with intent to commit a felony, and discharging a firearm during a crime of violence. The Associated Depressed, as Rush Limbaugh would say. The Associated Press, or the AAP, easier to say, reports that prosecutors allege Allen had taken a photo of himself minutes before the incident wearing black clothing, a red tie, a shoulder holster, ammunition bag, and knife. Near the ballroom before an exchange of gunfire with Secret Service agents. President Trump and everyone at the dinner were uninjured. The AP reports a Secret Service officer's bullet-resistant vest was struck, but of course that officer was and is okay. Now, right after that, the phrases came quickly. There is no room for political violence. We hear that all the time. I'm doing this as quotes, not as sarcasm. Tone down the rhetoric. We hear that. Both are true as far as they go in a vacuum, but neither one goes deep enough. And I would suggest to you guys that society doesn't become this combustible because of one speech. It takes time. One tweet, one campaign, or one news cycle. This is an instability that is growing in this new soil of America that we are trying desperately to root out and weed out. You know, we have dehumanization, spiritual confusion, and I think just moral exhaustion. The DOJ publicly framed the case as an alleged attempt to assassinate President Trump and target administration officials. On April 27, there were federal official quotes saying that law enforcement prevented the attack from succeeding. AP reports that prosecutors said Allen allegedly tracked Trump's movements online that night and then scheduled emails titled, quote, apology and explanation, unquote. They were sent around 8:30 p.m. shortly before the attack attempt. Okay, that brings us up to speed with at least where we are as of this production. RC and Juliana, want to start with your general take on what happened here and what has happened since.
Andrew, things that weren't on our bingo card on Saturday night. We were actually at the Florida Family Voice Gala. We get home and we hear about what's going on. Once again, what comes to mind, we've talked about our fair share of assassination attempts or mass shootings on this show, is how does this guy get to the point where he can do that? Now, since it's happened, we've heard some other chatter, and that chatter has been around how lax the level of security was until right before you got to the ballroom. Now, there were correspondents in the green room doing a meet and greet right near where the red carpet was. So what you had is you had top department officials in the government, along with media people, all together with no security checkpoint to get there. Like all you had to do was show an email that you got a ticket
to that event and you could walk right in. So imagine if this guy had been 15 minutes earlier. A lot of the people concentrated in the cabinet were all in one place with no security parameters. Could have been a whole lot worse. But then I think all the questions that have come out in the media, Juliana, have been pretty consistent with that. Like, where's the security?
Well, I think at the end of the day, though, it is a spiritual issue that we're having, right? Because that's where it starts. There's warring in the heavens that are happening, and it's showing up here on earth, because that's what's supposed to be happening. But unfortunately, where's the church? Where's the church saying what's happening? I just feel like as a church, we're just singing louder, and we're not really addressing what's happening with our culture.
Now, we'll say there is a spiritual thirst and wonder. So I posted a reel on our YouTube channel at Culture Crossroads 316 is our YouTube channel on YouTube. And it actually received quite a bit of traction, more likes than most of them. And particularly the percentage compared to all the thumbs down, because, we have unpopular opinions here on the program, and that's fine. But that told me that we were over the target, but in a positive way. People sense there is a spiritual undercurrent, a spiritual foundation underneath what is bubbling up culturally. I'll ask you this question as it pertains to culture and the political question of this. When leaders say, things like tone down the rhetoric, which we heard that from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, the morning after. We hear it from Democrats. We hear it from Republicans. We're also hearing it when it comes to President Trump got into it again with Jimmy Kimmel, because Jimmy Kimmel told a joke and said that Melania Trump was like an expectant widow. Now, in full context, he said that joke before this had happened, time-wise, on the timestamp. So he wasn't responding to this as an assassination attempt, and I'll defend that point. And this would be a joke that you would tell at any roast. If somebody is married to somebody who is not buying green bananas, you're probably going to say something about that. Well, I really think that's what it was. But of course, President Trump doesn't like Jimmy Kimmel personally and is trying to get him fired. And I'm bringing this up for a reason, you have roughly half of conservative media saying, yes, ABC should fire Jimmy Kimmel. The other half saying, well, yes, what Jimmy Kimmel said, even if it was in a proper context in terms of it wasn't in response to the shooting, even if it was in that context, it's ugly, it's repugnant, what have you. But that doesn't mean he should be fired. And it certainly doesn't mean that the White House or the president should be pressuring or giving the appearance of pressuring any corporation to do anything, let alone fire their people or change their program. This brings me to the question, when leaders say tone down the rhetoric, if we're going to go along with that, well, who's going to get to decide what speech is dangerous, what speech is merely offensive, what's provocative, or what's morally or physically urgent?
This is a slippery slope that we're on right now, because we, the people, need to be making sure that we're hearing what it is that we want to hear based on our activity with the viewership, right? If we don't like what's being said, we need to change that channel and turn on something else. But I don't think anybody has the right to tell anyone that they're not allowed to say what they want to say unless it's a direct threat to someone in front of you, right? But outside of that, we've got a freedom of speech for a reason. We need to protect that under all circumstances.
Andrew, I would add to Juliana's great point is that pot meet kettle for these same people who are saying, tone down the rhetoric. Why don't you tone down your rhetoric and stop putting people in a position like this guy who had obviously become radicalized in whatever form to go do something like this? It's like you'll take whatever cheap shots you need to take and turn up the rhetoric to get your political points. But then when the fire jumps off the frying pan and gets you, you're like, oh, don't burn me. No, wait, you need to turn down the rhetoric. It's like, maybe you guys should take a look in the mirror and lead by example as public servants. And maybe that rhetoric would be turned down a little bit on the different networks who are highly partisan. And then people would not do crazy things.
What responsibility do you think then that political commentators, or let's expand that, pastors, media hosts, even citizens have when we're talking about our opponents? One of the things I mentioned, again, on the YouTube post about this was we can have all the laws, or we can fire these people, or we can police speech, or we can do all this stuff. It's not going to change anybody's hearts. And until we have at least a return to a basic respect of human beings. I'm not talking about we agree on anything, but just you are a human being, and I respect that much at least. And that's one thing why on this program, you don't hear me calling people, pet names or making fun of them, even people that I vehemently disagree with, because I'm trying to model that as well, even with this. And I know that if I created a bunch of pet names for people like President Trump does with everybody, it would be entertaining fodder. Some of that, could go viral, things like that. It would be very easy to do, and it's tempting, but I want to walk, and I want to walk my walk, and I want to do what I say that I encourage other people to do. What responsibility do you think people in the thought sphere have and the influence sphere have when we're talking about our opponents?
I mean, here's what comes to mind first for me, Andrew. Ezekiel 33:2. As leaders, we are held to a significantly higher standard because large amounts of people are put into our care. We have that responsibility, just like anybody else, in leadership. And it's okay, Andrew. We have a track record of this. We were joking the other day that we need to hire an archivist, and we could just run old episodes of the show and find out those things that are happening now from 2 or 3 years ago. But I digress. The importance here of being in a position of leadership, you can call a spade, but then to say, oh, now I'm going to give them a pet name, or now you should go take some kind of action that may harm that person or their family is completely out of pocket. So you can be honest and bold with the truth without openly threatening somebody or moving people to do things or like take a path of violence. That you don't need to do that.
Well, I don't think that Father would allow us to talk to each other. We're brothers and sisters in Christ, right? Just that alone, we should have a larger responsibility to how we are leading people and speaking to people and doing the things that we need to be doing as the leaders.
And I mean, I think we've seen too, just over the past 5-6 years, I go back really to the summer of George Floyd, if you will, and the contrast between you're getting arrested for opening up your barber shop. You're getting arrested for going surfing alone in the Pacific Ocean.
He had a good business, solid product, good people. He just couldn't figure out why growth had stalled. Sherlock found the buyers he didn't know were looking. Now he knows exactly where to go next. Learn more at investinanswers.com.
He had a good night, and then a morning thought he couldn't shake. Opened his phone, answered some questions, had a provider review it. Whatever he was worried about, he handled it. No office, no awkward waiting room, just done. 360phi.com. Your phone, your business.
Was it the same thing as last time? Instead of driving 40 minutes to find out, she ordered the test to her door and did it at home. She had real answers before the week was out. No waiting room, no half-day gone. 360phi.com. Real answers from home.
Yourself but you could gather in the streets and burn down buildings and destroy police cars and take over entire city blocks, and all that is mostly peaceful, and all that is in the name of equality. When we see the example, particularly of in accountability, of this kind of behavior is okay as long as it's directed this way, then we're going to turn the other cheek. I think that has emboldened a lot of what we're seeing, because these lone wolf assassins, I don't remember reading, or certainly not living through, a president that has had as many attempts or as many of these kinds of attempts surrounding a president. And we got to extend that to Charlie Kirk as well, who was assassinated. You got to wonder, all these, we're told they're all lone wolves. How are they getting that close? How are they getting up there? But also, what are the things that are we allowing, or are we, by our refusal to hold equal accountability across the board, are we making a foothold where these kinds of things can foster? I'll give you the last word, about 30 seconds.
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, look, the responsibility on that is, they talk about guns and the issue with guns, right? That's a mental illness. The gun is a tool.
It can be used for good or it can be used for bad. It's the operator that creates the issue. And we have to be honest about that, right? Until we do that, and by the way, we don't stop asking questions about how is security so lax that something like this even happens. We have to continue to do that in order to get to the root of the problem and actually fix it.
All right. We're going to leave the conversation there. Of course, we're going to continue to monitor that situation and bring you what we can as we can. But coming up next, are Americans being protected or conditioned for a managed, surveilled society? Well, we have 3 stories that might seem disconnected. We're going to connect them all, and we're going to uncover the surveillance state is alive and growing. That is next on Culture Crossroads.
The Cadillac is where Sydney, Montana goes to unwind. With cold drinks, legendary steaks, and plenty of ways to play. This is where friends gather and family-friendly fun is always on tap. Bring your group here or have us cater your next event. Either way, you know everyone's getting the best food around. So feed your hunger, quench your thirst, or try your luck. The Cadillac is where it's at.
And welcome back to Culture Crossroads. This segment, we're going to connect 3 stories that may seem separate. I suppose you could call this a rundown. Why not? We'll roll the graphic. We spare no expense here. There's 3 stories of vehicle monitoring, AI-powered national security, and renewed talk of a national service, or a draft, if you will. And the through line to all this is control, and it's control over you and me and everything we do. Let me set up the scene here. Ford Biometric recent reporting on patent activity says the company has explored technology using cameras and machine learning to, get this, read lips, scan your irises in your eyes, track your facial expressions, monitor your heart rate. Clearly, it must be reading your breath to be able to get your blood alcohol content, and potentially compare that biometric data to then other law enforcement databases. Ford's stated purpose is tied to voice commands, driver alertness, and fitness to drive use cases, but the privacy implications are obvious. This is how the surveillance state arrives every time, not with a villain's mustache and a villain's laugh and twirling their handlebars and a long monologue, but with a safety brochure. We're told it's for drunk driving. We're told it's for theft prevention, our convenience, national security, any number of things. But once they get their teeth into us, once the architecture exists, the real question then becomes, who controls it, who audits it, who profits from it, and who gets locked up by it? Now, pin in that, because it gets worse. Palantir. We've talked about Palantir quite a bit on this program, and if you've watched the program for any length of time, you will know that we warn you don't want Palantir anywhere near the levers of power in Washington, D.C., and here they are sitting, playing footsie, cozy, maybe right next to the vice president's office. And we have talked about that on the program. You can go back and find that. Palantir published a 22-point summary of, quote, the technological republic. In it, the company argues that democratic societies require hard power, and that hard power in this century will be built on software. The question is not whether AI weapons will be built, but who will build them and for what purpose. Point number 6 of this manifesto states that national service should be a universal duty and that society should, quote, seriously consider moving away from an all-volunteer military so that the next war is fought only if everyone shares the risk and the cost. This is unbelievable. Let's start with the kill switch. Do you really think we're debating about drunk driving, or is it about who owns the vehicle and who owns your emotion after you buy it?
We have been telling our audience for a very long time that here's the propaganda and then here's the truth, right? They have to have us have a buy-in somehow. So they make it sound all like we really need it and we just want for you to bring this in. When in reality, when we do our research and we see what's behind it, we're saying no, because you're right. Who's controlling the levers? Are they going to come after us, the church? We don't know what they're going to do with it.
Andrew, I got to tell you, I was taken back to early January when we did our special events in Naples in Southwest Florida. We did a 3-hour roundtable with people who had all these types of questions. Topics covered: phones and their ability to surveil you. What's good and bad about them? Well, we talked about that. We also talked about Instacart and their surveillance pricing. 20 different people get put in a room in a study. All of them get different pricing from Instacart based on all the data that's collected. We talked about Wegmans with biometric scans and what the future of stuff looks like with what President Trump has done with AI legislation. At the end of that roundtable, Andrew, he said that if all of these things converge and you're not watching the watchers, you're going to be in a situation where they determine what good behavior is, bad behavior is, no behavior is. Like I'm selling a car, good credit, bad credit, no credit, self credit. They're going to figure out what all of those things are. And isn't it interesting, Andrew, that this thing was passed in 2021? It kind of sat, and then they were ready to fire. They got everything together, said, here's how it's going to go. Here's your brochure. Have a nice day. Also interesting, Andrew, on the most recent vote on that legislation, over 50 Republicans believe that this is a good idea. That's really, really scary.
Yeah, it's 57 to be exact. And when we have more time and as we get closer to the primaries, I want to read all 57. We need to know which of our Republicans are not really our friends. And that's a whole other issue. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about do we need a different party, or how do we get the Republicans back in line if it's possible in the next segment. But for now, we're talking about all the biometric monitoring in there. When it talks about monitoring your irises, it also monitors the technology, monitors where your eyes move, how long they stay fixed in one particular spot. It monitors the agitation. It reads your lips and the lips of your passengers. In fact, technology already exists now in many cars, and I think many people have seen this through our car insurance. You will get, most car insurances now will offer you basically a low jack, and they'll give you a good driving or a safe driving discount. Now, what that already does is it monitors how you step on the gas pedal, how you step on the brake pedal, what kind of turns you're making, how often you're using your car, where exactly you're driving it to, et cetera, et cetera. Is biometric vehicle monitoring really the next frontier of our Fourth Amendment concerns?
100%, Andrew, because who's going to determine, right? It's like what we talked about with the CBDC and the social credit score. Who is going to determine what is good and bad, right? And then how far down the road is that going to go? Here's what's interesting about what you just said, though, is you talked about the iris scans and following. We'll come back to Sam Altman and WorldCoin, because that's how you get your crypto in the very near future if Sam Altman has his way. But they're scanning your iris, they're watching your movement, they're watching how long they're fixed, they're watching your lips, they're watching the interaction with the person you're with. Of course, they're going to build a dossier on that, and then your machine learning and predictive analytics are going to play good cop, bad cop. Here's what's even crazier, though, Andrew. That's silly because the technology still can't figure out context in the proper way, which isn't what this is about. But I wanted to bring that up to people so they understand how it works. But then you start to ask yourself, well, the technology we have now doesn't work right anyway. Half the time when we go to unlock our car doors with our fob, it doesn't work right, or it takes 2 or 3 times. Can you imagine in the road in a situation you're trying to get home, and the next, see, your car decides because you're in a hurry that it needs